Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, taking on a fun and exciting video for you guys today because we're taking a look at a new demo version of Mega Castlevania IV. If you're wondering what that is, I did a video on this maybe a year ago. It's a full remake of Castlevania IV on the Super Nintendo, brought over to the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive in this instance, at least for the title. And while this is in no way, shape, or form a completed project, it is got some gameplay in it. It is still a demo, but it is fun to take a look at. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But it's stuff like this I just absolutely love, and it's been a very busy Castlevania couple weeks for me. First we had the Ultimate version on Sega Saturn, Castlevania Symphony of the Night with the PlayStation 1 voiceovers. We also had an Amiga CD32 version of Castlevania, the remake on the Amiga side of things, and now we have a demo of Mega Castlevania IV. And that's not really surprising at all, considering October just happened. It is a very busy horror month, and Castlevania is synonymous with that actual genre being horror. And I will say off the top, this demo is way more expansive than anything I've seen from these developers before. Now, of course, this is still work in progress, so you have to kind of keep that in mind. And I would say the jumping here can be a little bit stilted compared to the Super Nintendo version, but the overall theme and intent of what Castlevania IV was is definitely coming over nicely to something like the Sega Genesis. And before you ask why do people do these projects, because obviously we already have Super Castlevania IV on the Super Nintendo, it's because they just want to do them. That really is something that is a reason, and it's good enough for me. Additionally, a lot of these developments end up gleaning more information for developers that come along in the future and want to make original games, so everything like this definitely has its place, and it is a lot of fun. Now, I will say that this ROM will definitely do some weird things whether you're on Mr. FPGA, software emulation, or on real hardware, because this is my first run of the game and you're going to see I get stuck and have to actually reset. So pay attention to the candles, pay attention to the images in the background. They're going to look completely different the next time I load the game up. So you can definitely tell that this is very alpha, but for what is going on here, it definitely is promising, and I really do hope the developers actually finish this and bring the entirety of Castlevania IV over to the Sega Genesis. And I will say right off the top, the overall Sega look and vibe here give the game a completely different feel. Yes, the levels are basically adhering to what they would be on Super Nintendo, but otherwise, make sure you do not fall down into this pit because you'll be stuck here into eternity. And as we go back into the next run of this game, you're going to see that everything in the background looks relatively the same, but all of a sudden some of the effects here are going to be corrupted. So I have no idea what's actually going on there. Could be some sort of memory address issue on a reset. Maybe I just should have basically closed it and opened it again, but it's one of those things. You can definitely tell they're still working on this. But it does actually ring true to what Super Castlevania IV was. It is one of my favorite non-Metroidvania games of all time, and even though I would give the nod to Rondo of Blood for being the best non-Metroidvania Castlevania game, this one definitely comes close. Please leave me a comment down below and you tell me, of all the non-Metroidvanias, which one is your favorite. I think there's an argument to be made for something like Rondo of Blood, Castlevania 3, Super Castlevania 4, even something like Bloodlines if you're a huge Sega fan, because I loved that game back in the day. And because we only got one proper Castlevania game on the Sega Genesis, having another one, even if it is a from the ground up remake of Super Castlevania IV, is definitely welcome in my opinion. But the Sega Genesis definitely has a completely different look, feel, and sound compared to Super Nintendo hardware, and it is very famous for kind of these more dramatic colors, as well as its really fun bassy soundtrack with all of the Yamaha chips on board. And you will see here the first boss, the Skeleton Bone Rider, definitely isn't moving, so the logic really isn't programmed in there yet. And as we go to the right of the screen, we're going to pop right into the next stage. But this again is just intriguing, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things learned here as it continues development. You'll definitely see, depending on what's on screen, there might be some slowdown just like the Super Nintendo version, but I'm sure as this develops further that could really be removed and definitely be improved in the future. Let's go into the first soundtrack sample, because again it's going to be classic Castlevania music, but you're going to be hearing those tunes in the Sega Genesis sound hardware versus something like the Super Nintendo, so they have a different vibe. And I'll be right back with more. mean, in my opinion, one of the most interesting things about conversions like this is when you hear a very familiar soundtrack in a completely different scope. And that is the thing about not using Redbook audio, because of course the music in Super Castlevania IV is produced by the sound chips on the Super Nintendo, which means it has to be reproduced by a completely different set of sound hardware on the Sega Genesis side. So even though the composition is the same, the notes and instrumentation do vary, and I think the Sega Genesis does a really good job with the music here. Now I totally get that's going to be subjective. You might like this a lot more than the Super Nintendo original. You might think that the overall tone shift could be completely something that you hate, but it really is something that just basically gives it a completely different feel alongside the overall colorways and artwork on display. Now it is a bit of a bummer that the bosses don't seem to have any logic, or maybe they do, and when I loaded this game up and it had that slight sprite corruption, maybe that's something that broke. That is the reality of something when you're actually dealing with prototypes like this, just playing around with the in-development process. And I just kind of stand here hanging out to take a look at the background. I really like that dithering pattern, kind of giving that shading in the back. I like the brown and the overall green. I just want to kind of hang on a screen here for just a moment so we can take a look at the colorways, all of those browns, and it really does look like a really cavernous area that you would not want to be in, especially with a Medusa just hanging out, kind of sitting there waiting to kill you. You will see that as we get further into the demo, some of the areas are definitely void of a lot of things to do, and this stairwalk animation looks pretty hilarious, but also definitely not what it should be doing. But this is one of those things, I kind of like watching the development process go along, and I think you guys too, because even though the fun is to be had when this thing is completed and it is a full remake of Castlevania IV, at least for me personally, I love seeing how these things evolve. And I'm not sure if that background image right there in parallax is supposed to be corrupted no matter how you actually boot the game, or if it's just something, an aberration that came about with this one run I did, because you can definitely get stuck here and have to reset, and because I was still making forward momentum, I didn't really want to try to see if I could get those glitches out. But this is just something that is always fun to me, especially because Konami basically forgets that Castlevania exists whatsoever. Sure, we got a new Silent Hill remake as well as Silent Hill F, but it seems like Konami is just determined to leave Castlevania in the overall garbage bin of we don't care about the franchise anymore, it isn't paying the bills, and we'll just put it in patch a slot and pachinko machines. So it is up to fans to give us fun things like this, and honestly, with the Sega Genesis only having Bloodlines, this is definitely a welcome thing for me. This would be fun to play. Hopefully by maybe next Halloween it is done so we can check it out. But I love this area here with these green kind of bluish waterfalls coming down. Feels both like water and also like a completely different substance like bile at the same time. But one more soundtrack sample, because again, I love how the Sega Genesis sound hardware changes the overall tone, and I'll be right back to show you at least where I think the demo ends, because I wasn't able to get any further than where I stopped. There's just something about that slight reverb that I think actually works for that song. But you'll see here, some of the jumps are definitely pixel perfect, and that's definitely something that would be improved, I'm sure, in an actual further on release. As we drop up to this waterfall area here and move to the next screen, you're basically going to see this is about where the demo is going to start to end. But compared to last time I took a look at this, we basically only had the first two areas. You're seeing a lot more stuff here. And I love when you actually do fall to your death, you basically just push a button and you're revived immediately. That would actually be a fun feature to include in the ROM hack in the future as some sort of extra easy mode for people that really don't want the challenge of the Super Castlevania IV. So when you have that knockback and you fall to your death because it feels a little bit cheap, you can just push a button and respawn exactly where you are, or maybe just have a situation where you lose some health and basically get respawned onto the screen. But this is definitely shaping up to be something awesome, and I really do hope that it does get finished. But like any sort of ROM hack, we really don't know if that's actually going to be the case. I kind of like covering these things as well. They're kind of just an ephemeral moment in time because sometimes they don't get finished, and this build might be the last build. This build might be like 4 more to go until we're actually playing this as a fully realized product. And you will see here something invisible is hitting me, and I was able to kill it, and you have that beast in the background. But from this point on, I wasn't able to find anything that I could hit unless it's invisible. So this is kind of where the demo ended for me. If you want to check this one out, the link is in the video for the creator on YouTube, and I linked to their channel and video down below, so you can definitely take it for a spin and get a sense of what's going on. Leave me a comment down below, and you tell me what you think about Super Castlevania IV on Sega Genesis so far, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.